America is the land of opportunity. It's also the land of the free. And it's definitely the home of the brave. And boy, were there some brave individuals this weekend. The race here in Snowshoe was one of the wildest we've seen in a while, with plenty of surprises to keep the viewers guessing. Let me tell you all the stories and catch you up on what happened at the penultimate round of the Downhill World Cup. Well, the track was savage, that was for sure. The combination of slick dirt and ever more exposed rocks took its toll on bicycles and riders alike, with more than a few broken parts. Healing vibes to Dean Lucas, who had a very scary one where he hit a tree, stretched his spinal cord, which temporarily switched off his central nervous system from his neck down. Waking up to no feeling for a period of time has got to be one of the scariest things, and we wish Dean all the best for his thankfully what should be a full recovery. We were gutted to not have our last World Cup winner battling for a win this weekend. Benoit Coulange had one of those awkward low-speed front-wheel washouts that usually ends up with you just dusting yourself off and carrying on. Luck wasn't on his side though, and he cracked his scaphoid, putting him out of action for the rest of the season. Bikes didn't do much better, with several punctures during proceedings, with Laurie Greenland, Jack Piercy, Tuhoto Ariki-Penny, Richie Rood, Jackson Goldston, all getting punctures at various points during the semis and finals. There's just no dodging the rocks here in Snowshoe. If you get pushed offline by a couple centimetres or mistime a pump and catch an edge, there's very little that the tyres and inserts can do to shrug off those forces. Luck really does have a larger part to play in this race than others, and we'll dive into that thought a little bit later. So, anyone else notice lots of riders were washing out on the easiest turn of the track, right? What the hell? In her Inside the Luminous Shafts video from the other day, I said track builders had replaced the Moto Whoop section with some flat turns to keep spectators entertained. I didn't think it would be quite that entertaining though. So why were people crashing? Well, Gwyn absolutely called it on the live feed again. The rut developed during the junior practice in the wet when riders were going slower. The slower a rider is going, the less you need to lean over into the turn. The more leaned over a rider, the closer the handlebar gets to the foam course marker on the inside. That means the slower the rider, the closer they can run their wheels to the marker, developing a very tight rut. As things dried out and went faster, they leaned in more, causing many riders to punch the course marker, which can easily cause a crash. To avoid this, riders either had to go Moto GP spec and hold the bike up while they leaned the body in, or put the wheels further away from the course marker. And as the rut dried out, the top edge crumbled and riders got pushed over the edge by their speed, which only made things harder for subsequent riders. It's one of the many variables that makes downhill such a difficult and interesting sport. There were some riders that mastered the difficult conditions, and American Taylor Osgaard was the first to claim a medal for America and her best finish of the year in second. She rode super confident and aggressive from top to bottom and deservingly scored that podium spot. Valentina Roa Sanchez backed up her win from last week with another top result in third. The young Colombian is finding her feet this year after a bit of a shaky start and is looking confident with the overall lead going into the final round. Iris van Leuven showed once again when she's on it, she's untouchable. She dominated by a colossal margin in qualifying and backed it up with a convincing win by 6 seconds ahead of second place. She's worked herself into third position in the overall, 50 points behind the leader, and with 60 points available for a win. The season is not over yet. In the junior men, Daniel Castellanos Liberal was impressing all weekend with some great speed and steezy moves. He hasn't had a result since his third place in Leogang at the start of the year when it rained for the faster riders, but he's been grafting away all year working towards another good result. And it was cool to see him finishing just off the podium in fourth. Milan Falque is a first-year junior who has been slowly progressing all year long. He always looks super fast and composed in practice, and it's taken all year for him to put together the kind of run we knew he could do. Third place for the Goodman Racing rider, who are a team registered under Pinkbike Racing as our B team. Keep an eye out for him in the future. Evan Metcalf has come on strong in the second half of this season. He looks to be calm and composed and confident in his racing and riding. He didn't rush things and laid down one of the smoothest runs of the weekend to slot into second place at his home race. Ryan Pinkerton has well and truly hit his groove with his 4th win on the bounce, which secures him the overall win. He's really impressed with his consistency and intensity in the second half of this season and is a very bright prospect for the future. He'll be the man to beat next week, but I'll bet there will be some riders throwing everything at it to try and steal some gold away from him at the final round. The semis were pretty exciting, but I am rapidly running out of time to get this video done, so let's just rattle through the cool moments. Nina Hoffman clipped a rock with some part of her bike causing a cloud of white smoke, and I kind of feel like we'd be able to tell what happened with a broadcast camera instead of the drone, but then we might not have seen it at all, so it's a 6 1/2 situation. Valley got pushed a little offline. She ended up a few centimeters to the right, caught an edge and laid it down. Lost loads of time and still won the semi. Yeah, figure that one out. Nico did similar and almost went skeetering off track, but Big Rick wrestled it back into line. Someone always hits the tree after the flat drop, and this year it was Joe Breeden's turn. Luckily he was all good, but he was not happy as he was on a really good run. Luke Meyer-Smith was the first elite to get caught out by the final ruts. You couldn't see them on camera, but they were deep and awkward and blind until you were just at them. Anyone else notice the timing glitch on Jacob Jewett's run? He got a 3:08 on the live feed, kind of podium pace in glitch world. Ethan Cracks spotted $1 in the finish bowl.
Good one. That was quick. That could well be the fastest off it.
Ollie Davis belly flopped into some boulders while on a top 10 run, which stalled his run of insane races. He looks to be okay, so should be racing next week. Jack Piercy hit that right-hander after the steep shoot harder and more inside than anyone. Everyone was stoked except for his tire, which promptly left the chat. Jackson Goldstein showed how easy it was to get offline in those bottom rocks, but he recovered well. Danny Hart surprised everyone with a front wheel washout in one of the easy bike park berms. He wanted the win and must have been pushing the limits of grip too far. Dakota Norton had a silly crash and then proceeded to open all of the taps to go fastest in Sector 4 and get 5th in the semis, which was unreal. Bruni had the fastest and cleanest foot dab in history. Blink and you will miss it.
3/10 again at the second split. Different line there. He followed the...
In the women's final, Millie Yonset really demonstrated how vicious that rock drop can be with a solid headbang on her race run. You've either got to land really early or really far to catch some downslope. Land in the middle and it's all upslope. Gloria Scarsi has really cemented herself as a top downhill racer, as she's only raced 2 of them this year and finished on the podium both times. Her enduro fitness would have suited the long, draining, traversing rock garden, but her intensity has been a real surprise. Great result for her. Tanny Seagrave is fighting her way back to the top, and she went out the gate with intention this weekend. Fastest top split for Tanny, but she lost momentum at the bottom on her way to a 4th place finish. Nina recovered well from her crash in seeding and laid down a solid run with only minor little mistakes. At the bottom, she had a different rhythm in the bottom jump, squashing the first, then doubling the next 2 on her way to 2nd place. Maureen was so strong in those bottom rocks. She pulled 2 seconds in that penultimate sector, and it must have been the exit of the rock garden, but we never got to see it, as we're looking at a shot of our team manager. And I understand what they're trying to do, but racing is so short and we cannot give up time to watch the manager and risk missing something on track. Show the manager in the highlights immediately after if they have any cool reactions, not during. So Valley was on pace to win the semi-final by about 8 seconds. This race should have been a walk in the park for her, but the brain is a funny thing, and when you start to think about not crashing so you can win the overall, your focus gets all warped. Instead of trying to do the best run you can do, you're thinking of all the negatives, where you might crash, where you need to be cautious, and this just makes you ride tight and awkward. And don't get me wrong, she went fast. She was on the same pace as our semi-finals run, but all the other girls went faster. So Valley finished 3rd, secured the overall, and seemed happy on the outside, but there were undercurrents of frustration in her interviews, and I think she's going to let loose in Mountain Anne. I can't wait to see it. Phil Atwell was the first rider in the men to make me flinch when he blew his foot off in those bottom rocks. Richie Rude didn't flinch though. That guy is an absolute tank. He went off that drop into the rough and I thought for sure we'd see like a little head nod or something, but no. And what the body doesn't absorb though, the bike does, and Richie flatted, ending his hopes of a top result. Max Hartenstern must have messed his pants, because I certainly did. He caught the edge of a rock with his back wheel just as he was unweighting, and the bike did the scariest nose manual in history through those next rock steps. Well held, my man. Laurie Greenland was on for a good one this weekend, but it wasn't to be. He came a tiny bit too wide over the crest, tried to steer between the two rocks in the compression, which tipped him further off balance, and there was just nothing he could do as he tried to stop before hitting the tree on the outside. Luckily, he seems to be all good. Bernard Kerr absolutely sent it on his run. You could see he was going for the win, but he lost time catching edges in those bottom rocks. We saw him after and he's gutted as he felt he had it this weekend. 5th place for BK. Loris Vergier had a super clean run, which is very rare for this track. He held great pace on every split with no obvious weak points in his run. He just lacked a little bit of bravery or reckless abandon, depending on your point of view. 4th place for Virgil. Everyone was excited to see if Dakota Norton could take his first win at his home World Cup. And boy, did he give it a go. He wasn't super quick in the top 2 splits, but he tore things up down in those lower rocks. He sent it in with bravery and precision and held his lines bang on. His exit speed out the bottom rocks was breathtaking, and he had the fastest split in there. It wasn't to be enough though, with him finishing in an excellent 3rd place. You know, I mentioned luck is a bigger factor on this track than others. Well, the Irish know a thing or two about that, and Ronan Dunn was going for that gold at the end of the rainbow this weekend. It's crazy that he's managed to find consistency in his all-out riding style, but I am here for it. He knew he had the win in him this week, and on any other day he probably would have done it. Turns out, another Irishman had a bigger share of the luck this weekend, and please don't let this analogy detract from the absolute insane run Oisin laid down this weekend. Luck is a small factor and the rest is pure skill. Oisin was riding with aggression and confidence all weekend and frequently was impressing everyone watching. To go 5th in quali, 2nd in semi and 1st in the race shows composure, fitness and a sense of belonging at the top end of the sport. So impressive, and the look on his face when he realised he'd won was absolutely priceless. But what about Bruni? The dawn of downhill was looking fast and was just a fraction up on the splits when a strange crash took him out of contention. Now, I've gone frame by frame trying to figure out what exactly happened, and the best I can tell is Cedric Gracia called it. Bruni clips the pad on the tree while his front wheel is unweighted, and it just sends him squint, and there's just not enough room for him to save it. It was a horrible crash, and I'm glad he was able to ride away from it. If that's the line Bruni had been taking in practice, I'm surprised he hit the pad. It makes me think someone maybe crashed into it before his run and moved it so that it was sticking out a little bit more. It's a shame for him, but it makes things tighter in the series going into the final round in Mont Saint Anne. That's it from us here at Pinkbike. Hope you enjoyed the coverage and are looking forward to more next week. Subscribe so you don't miss it, and let us know what you want to see in the comments. That's it. We're trucking to Mont Saint Anne right now. Let's go.